Morning, Bluebird semaphore, and I hope there's not too much light on this side. Okay, anyway, today, Joe Wimberg, Bluebird semaphore, and today what we try to do is do a kind of a overview of what I've been talking about, the Silk Road and Central Asia, what I've been reading about, talking about, and I'm going to do it in schematic format, and it's just to try to go over that area of the world, 1200 to 1500, because I want to get off that discussion on the Silk Roads and Central Asia and get back to discussing primarily East Asia. And I'm going to need a particular note in front of me. There it is. The schematic format that I'm thinking of doing is I want to bisect the continent of Eurasia. Okay? And that's a line going down the center of Eurasia. Okay? Over here at the west we have the Mediterranean. That's the Med. And over here we have the Pacific. Okay? Now, we've been talking a lot about this area. Central Asia. And we've talked about how the West, at the time frame of 1200, 1300, were not all that developed, and they were looking to the East as the great, rich, fabulous kingdoms, world, and that created a desire for those riches, and that necessitated coming up with trade routes. And that's the whole rationale behind creating the Silk Roads. Now, we talked about this area here, Central Asia. Okay? And it is north and south, east and west, were large geographical areas, Central Asia. Before I really looked into Central Asia much, I would think of that area as an empty space, a great big empty space, which of course now I know it wasn't. It was populated with hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller villages and towns, and essentially some groupings of people that could be clearly described as cities. And so I was totally wrong. This is a populated area, and people were living in the fashion of civilization, which means they cooperated, they had laws, so on. And the Silk Road would go through those places, all right? Something like this. They would all go through those places to get themselves back to East Asia, around the area of present-day Beijing. Although at one time it ended before getting to Beijing. Marco Polo ends before Beijing. Now, the reason why I said 1200 to 1500, because those are important times relative to that area of the world. And at about 1200 to 1300, in that time frame, there was so much trade that the need to monetize, which means for these state-like places needed to come up with the concept of monetization, meaning they started to mint coins. And why I find that particularly noteworthy is that prior to that, the groupings of people in the fashions that they lived, whether it was towns, cities, it was relatively little or no stratification. But with the coinage, people, and monetization, with that, people were able to start collecting wealth in a easily distributed fashion. They were no longer bartering. I'll give you 3 horses, you give me 5 barrels. They weren't doing that anymore. They were just living pretty much. There were the top folks, and then there was everybody else. And no stratification. But when these everybody else's were starting to be able to put away a coin here and a coin there, and all of a sudden they became wealthy, they decided they were going to start to buy some of these fabulous goods from the East, okay? And they would start to separate themselves from the herd. And then that caused stratification. You had wealthy, a little less wealthy, so then poor, based on the money, the coinage that they were able to put away, okay? So to me, that time period, 1200 to 1300, let's call it the 13th century, it shows the start of stratification in the societies. Now, it's something that I've always been curious about. When did that start, you know? I mean, I was born into the idea that all these civilizations on the planet today is just so stratified. It's incredible. And I always wanted to know where that came from. Well, that's where it came from. All right, so in 900 AD, there's no stratification. 1300, there's definitely stratification. And, you know, we know that there was coinage by lots of various means, you know, finding coins and in tombs and archaeological digs and being able to date them. But one very interesting, to me, reason why we know about this monetization is that when Marco Polo was in China, he came across paper money for the first time, and he thought it was amazing. You know, that's almost like a discovery, the discovery of paper money. So that's one area that's one reason that was important in that 1200, 13th century time frame. And during this time frame, the Mongols were continually raiding and continually building their empire all over, even up into Europe and the Balkans, okay? And down here in southern Asia and this area closer to India. So you had the raiders. You also had the Black Plague, was devastating this whole area. You know, many people thought it would be the end of the world. Like, for example, they just did. You know, so. But as we go beyond 1300, we start to see things starting to take a change. They're starting to become different entities that are powerful enough to push back on the Mongols. Now, we have to go all the way to the other end of this period, closer to the 1500, to find those people that are Turco-Mongolian, that are giving the Mongols some pushback. And they primarily seem to come out of the area that would be Persia. And I'm going to put Persia over here. Okay? And the number one wealth well-known, famous person to come out of there is Timur, also referred to as Tamerlane. He goes around and does a lot of conquering. He winds up in Samarkand, right about here, let's see, which becomes a fabulous city, well-known architecture, known throughout the world then, pretty much well-known now, even in the Islamic style. The architecture was. I believe he was Islamic himself, but he makes Samarkand his city. He's buried there. He was born in this general area. This time frame is 1500. So quite a lot of time has gone by since the 1300s, the 13th century, and this now the beginning of the 16th century. So this was a crossroad for the Silk Road, okay, and then it would pretty much go up north. You couldn't go here because go straight across major deserts. You stayed away from that. But basically, people got to the east via going around and through some of the passes in the mountains here, and some went over the top and came in this way. Also, others went by sea from areas around the Mediterranean, and then they would wind up in on the very, very west coast of India and start headed up this way. I don't think they went up this way, but they could have. Long story short is that I would like to get out of this talking about Central Asia. I was very pleased to find out that there were many, many, many villages, towns, and small cities throughout this area. There was a lot of civilization going on. Trade was big, and that trade led to monetization, which led to stratification of the societies. So, when all is said and done, however, nothing remains the same, right? There's always change. And at the time, 1500, times are changing. Excuse me. Time is definitely changing. So this guy, this Timur, Tamerlane, he's the Turco-Mongolian leader here. And when he dies, or maybe before he dies, he pushes into India. And I believe it was his son, Akbar, who becomes the first Mughal emperor. And a Mughal is pretty much an empire that did cut through the western part of India, in Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and others, maybe even Uzbekistan, but and parts of India, the Mughal emperors, which stuck around for about 300 years, and they became fabulously wealthy, of course. So much so that there was a time when they were ruling India, a vast part of India, that was the richest economy in the world. So you can see the richness is moving around. You know, it's in the east, it's over here in the Central Asia and India. The vast wealth is moving around. And this is, I think, is in a very important point in world history, is the creation of the Mughals. One result of that Mughal vast wealth, of course, is the Taj Mahal. The romantic prince built it for his lover, and the there's no bottom line here, but the wealth, like I said, has been moving around, and things are not static. At the same time, 1500s, and this Timur is going on. And by the way, he was pretty much feared by the rest of the world. He did his raiding too, just like the Mongols did, and the things are changing. Further west, these countries now are starting to make their muscle felt. And I would like to say, particularly with Spain, Isabel and Ferdinand, and all the explorers, they're exploring. So we get to a point where this whole paradigm flips, and now the West becomes the point that everybody's looking to get involved in being fabulously wealthy. And of course, that's fueled by all the gold and the silver that's coming from the New World. Interesting side note is that a lot of that gold and silver and other precious metals and precious commodities, that the West now is the gatekeeper for the rest of the world, is still coming from the Far East, right? The Spanish ships sail basically to the Far East from the western parts of the New World over to the Old World. They get their cargo of gold, silk, ceramics, silver, and they come back to the New World and they transship it back to the Old World. So the source is still, in some ways, still the same. A lot of the wealth, of course, came from the New World, the silver of South America, and so on. So, in an attempt to try to wrap that up, though, the discussion that I've been having, and to try to get back to the East Asia discussion, which was the primary, which was always my intent in the beginning, but then the library shut down and I couldn't get any information. The library's starting to open up again, though. I told you about the Avalon Library, and now there's another one, a much larger one nearby, the Ocean City Free Public Library. I can join a $25 fee for the year, which is not bad. But, you know, when the Ocean County Library was functioning, I didn't need that one. You know, I was, for no fee, I could be a member of the Cape May County Library. And I'll join this Ocean City Free Public Library. It is in Cape May County, but it's not part of the Cape May County library system. But it's a large library, and I'm sure it's going to be adequate for my needs. Now, that being said, I want to get back to East Asia. And I think a good jumping off point might be, by the way, I also my idea, and I don't know if I can do this, I want to try to split East Asia up into 4 quadrants. So let's say 1, 2, 3, and 4. And try to peer into those geographical regions. Obviously, it's a huge nut to crack, East Asia, you know, so how do you crack it? I may try that attempt. And in the meantime, I came across this fella's name, Zhang Qian. Zhang, Z-H-A-N-G, second part of his name is Q-I-A-N. Now this fella, very important, very important. At a time frame of about 150 BC, and I think we're accurate, he's close enough to say that that was in the Han Dynasty. and the emperor, the Chinese emperor at the time, could have been Wudi, Emperor Wudi. Okay, the current emperor, whether it was Wudi or somebody right after him, was having a problem with some of these folks out west. Once again, Central Asia. He was having a problem with these people. They weren't towing the line. They were causing him some grief. So he had a fairly brilliant young man living in his kingdom, Wudi, and I think his kingdom was more down around here in China. I don't want to say it was southern China, but it may have been just south of the Big Bend in the Yellow River, and that is traditionally looked at as the original point region of Chinese civilization. Now this time frame, of course, is thousands of years after the origin of Chinese civilization in that Great Bend and the Yellow River. So they're pretty advanced by now. The cities and towns all over the place in China, pretty advanced. But in his court, he was aware of this person, young man, very, very smart, knew a lot, Zhang Qian, Qian. And he decides he's going to send him as an envoy out to this area where the people are giving him a problem and see if he could talk and parlay with them and get them to cooperate with the Chinese Empire. So he sets out, he goes there, and he becomes captive / prisoner of these people. And he's there for a relatively long time. And these people, I don't have their name written down, but as I get into East Asia again, I'll get particulars on him. They give him one of their own people as a wife, and she becomes his wife seemingly almost forever. And finally he escapes, he gets out, and he gets onto the original people that he wanted to convince to help go after these other people, the people who had him as prisoners. So the main attempt of his envoy, his ambassadorship, was to go meet these second people and convince them to become partners with going after these other people. All right? Now, I'm saying that very loosely with no specific names. Hopefully, when I get back into East Asia, I'll have those specifics. I know I read them yesterday, so they're there, there's no doubt. There's a lot of information on this guy. So he goes there. These other people, the second people, they said, we're perfectly happy where we are. We don't need to get any more war. We don't want any more trouble. So just go away, take your wife and go away, which is what he did. But in the meantime, he recorded an amazing description of the lands and the peoples that he met along the way. And I'll go on record, and I haven't read a lot of what he wrote, but when I read how Marco Polo did his description and how I'm now reading the description from this guy, whether it's first hand or possibly second hand, just so much written, so much more in the way we would write and think today. Marco Polo's writing was more or less just a cataloging. I saw these people, they lived with horses and herded, they ate goat cheese. The next town was 50 miles away, we were there, they sleep in wooden cabins, they get up in the morning and they eat goat cheese. The same stuff over and over. So, yes, you read it for the details, but it's not really pleasant reading. This guy, on the other hand, seems he's going to have pleasant reading and plenty of details. Now, he becomes one of their first and greatest historians, geographers, explorers. And to this day, he's still a Chinese national hero. And so I'm really chomping at the bit to get into that. And hopefully I will next time we're here at the World History for Ordinary People. And although I can continue talking for the rest of my life, I'm going to bring this brief session of World History to an end for now. Bye. See you. Thanks for listening.